I don't recognize you. I remember this scenario, however. Hello? It's a strange thing to want to do. To come here. I'm curious what events would lead a person to want to spend their nights in a place like this, willingly.
Oh, Daddy, let me go to her.
Maybe curiosity. Maybe ignorance.
Everything is okay. I'm still here.
The show will begin momentarily.
Just like the journey of Mike himself, this challenge run of solving FNAF's lore by only playing the games is finally nearing its conclusion. And what a ride it has been. We've seen this little game evolve from a nifty indie thriller stuffing a tale of child murder behind its walls, to a full-on franchise with spin-off media that involves robot doppelgangers and soul juice. Okay? But I'm not here for any of that. I've only got one goal, and that's to solve this story using only what I can play. And boy, did this game help out with that. From finally giving us the identity of the serial killer to diegetically revealing the context behind FNAF 4's biggest secret, Sister Location delivered on every single front. And I can't wait to get into this with you guys. So now let's bow in and see what lies where memory sleeps. So unlike every other game in the franchise so far, Sister Location is the FNAF equivalent to a visual novel, which means there's less of a focus on gameplay and more of a focus on story. However, just like FNAF World, we have a unique cutscene that plays upon booting up the game itself for the first time, and I run into the first issue in the run.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
That's right, Purple Guy finally has his name from the novels ported over to the games, and it was here that I had to reassess my challenge entirely. At this point, I was forced to ask, how much do I acknowledge the outside media and allow that to inform the discoveries within the game, such as the illusion discs? And more importantly, should I just try to carry on with only solving the story using what is in the game media itself, even though the spin-off media can definitely be used to fill in the gaps ahead of their actual release? Well, y'all know me. I haven't been much for reading so far, and I don't plan on starting now. There's also no need to really worry about it now, because believe it or not, there's enough information given in Sister Location to connect these dots without the books, at least for right now. Anyways, the pre-title cutscene reveals that Afton built these robots with a bunch of child entertaining aspects in mind, as well as some other features that the rest of the voices are concerned about in this meeting. And those features will become very obvious as we continue on with the game. Jumping into Night 1, as you can see, we're playing as good old Mike for the first and potentially third, fourth time? And we're making our way to an underground bunker that houses equipment for circus babies, entertainment, and rentals. After a quick elevator ride, we get to make a wonderful first impression to Ballora, Funtime Foxy, and Baby by shocking them all. Like most FNAF games, there's not a lot to do on Night 1, so we head home and get to watch our favorite TV show, The Immortal and the Restless.
Clara, I tell you, the baby isn't mine!
Count, I tell you that it is!
I'm sure there's something going on with this TV show, but I'm just gonna turn my brain off with Mike for now and move on to the next night. After we get another British voiceover in between the nights, Hand Unit warns us about a dead body being found in a vent.
So, funny story? A dead body was found in this vent once? Okay, so, not that funny, but it's a story.
And we get some spooky setup for the gameplay with Ballora in a few minutes. Mike heads deeper into the bunker to check on Baby, and that's when things start to get creepy. Or they would, if not for this god-awful noise that is constantly playing in the background of this room. Okay, from what I was able to hear over the sound of constant tinnitus,
just try not to make eye contact.
Baby was giving us tips on how to survive the night. So we play along, avoiding the robots, ducking the dancer, and distracting Funtime Freddy long enough to turn the power back on so we can return to the next installment of Mike's favorite show.
Clara, the baby isn't mine!
Moving on, Night 3 not only hits us with a sick beat, but also a couple of new gameplay gimmicks that I'm able to one-shot thanks to the tactics I bit off of Chicken Ninja. However, a couple of easy tasks isn't all that lies in wait for us. Yes, Funtime Foxy nabs us on our way out the door, but if you pay a visit to Baby before the new gameplay sections, you'll get to hear her backstory.
Did you know that I was on stage once?
And personally, I really appreciate this. There are a lot of unanswered questions in FNaF, but Baby, as we'll soon learn, isn't one of them.
I still hear her sometimes.
Anywho, we move right along to Night 4, where we've been trapped in a spring-locked suit overnight, and there's a bunch of new dialogue on top of some rather interesting implications. First, let's address the infamous spring-lock minigame that Scott had to patch to be easier. It took me like 5 or 6 tries, but honestly, modern tactics have made all of the games really simple to get through if you can just get past the jump scares. And with that taken care of, onto those implications. One of the weird things I noticed is Baby's line about the cameras looking for us.
I think they noticed that you never left the building last night. The cameras were searching for you.
Now, she could be lying, spoilers, that's a thing she does, but this implies that somebody is actively keeping tabs on this place. And that idea is further supported by there being other employees who are dropping off Ballora while we're kidnapped.
What happened to it this time? Just seems like these things can't go a day without breaking down.
Which also means that somebody is actively renting from this place, which I think is honestly even weirder. However, that's all Night 4 has as far as interesting stuff goes. So we survive this gauntlet of challenges and make it home for another episode before returning for the final night. And Night 5 is where everything comes together, in more ways than one. We visit Baby, input a randomized code, grab this communication device, and then follow her instructions just so we can get our innards scooped out and replaced with innard. Sure. And don't worry, we're going to address all of this. I just wanted to speed run through the gameplay sections first because, as I mentioned, Sister Location is more akin to a choreographed sequence instead of a full-on video game. Outside of the hidden ending in the DLC, of course. And speaking of which, if you die throughout the game, there is of course another hidden death minigame. But unlike the other entries, you can access this minigame at any point by clicking the little baby icon in the corner of the extras menu. And if you happen to get the secret ending to that little portion of the game, then as you're leaving Baby behind on Night 5, you can ignore that little brat and head right to this hidden office that not only brings back the classic FNaF formula, but also gives us so much new lore context that it can potentially flip our entire understanding of FNaF 4 right on its head. Which is also why I happen to bring on a couple of new guest stars to discuss these points further in the video. Now you may be wondering why I bothered to cover the gameplay at all when we're here for the story and the lore. I mean, the challenge is literally called, Can I Solve FNaF by Playing the Games? Not, Can I Solve FNaF while achieving aggressive mediocrity in the games? And the answer to that is simple. It's because as the series continued, the story turned into the gameplay. In FNaF 1, most of it was tongue-in-cheek horror game stuff. We're just a guard at a crappy job that happens to be haunted. But in Sister Location, every choice we make as Mike is one the character is actively making too. It means that our actions are character-driven at all times, which is honestly one of the undiscussed benefits of making the game closer to a visual novel. But the coolest part about all of this is that that choice has been set up since the first encounter with Baby.
It's a strange thing to want to do, to come here. I'm curious what events would lead a person to want to spend their nights in a place like this.
That's right, Sister Location, due to the visual novel roots, has the most ludonarrative harmony between the games and the player, and because of this fact, we're not only able to answer Baby's question, but answer another one that the fans have been asking themselves for years. So throughout the week of this game, Mike finds himself in an ever-deepening pit of trouble. But the first question we gotta ask is, just when does this week take place? Well, thankfully, Hand Unit gives us a relatively clear starting point.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
This one line alone tells us that at least the first Freddy's, the one where the MCI happened, has closed. And this is important, because even though it means a number of other games may or may not have happened yet, that's not why this matters. No, the point of this line is it tells us spooky stuff is already going down in-universe, and this would be confirmed very shortly when Baby's story is revealed. As mentioned before, Night 1 is just introducing us to the new bots. And even though I'm not exactly subscribed to the idea that these bots may all be haunted, I do like that there's at least room for interpretation. Anyways, when we meet Baby, things start to change. The game is actively telling us that this robot can not only recognize people, but also events, as she's the one that gives Mike the advice to hide and survive Ballora. Unlike every other encounter in the series so far, Baby is highly self-aware, to the point of questioning why anyone would take this job. But more relevantly for us, she recognizes and recites her own history. As revealed in Night 3, Baby only had one day on stage, and for some reason, is programmed to keep tabs on just how many children are around her, which, yeah, is a bit sus. This gets even worse when she describes what happened next.
There was screaming for a moment, but only for a moment.
Must have been some gross ice cream.
Why did that happen?
Well, you know, that's a damn good question, Baby, and I think the game has just enough context to give us the answer. We know that William Afton programmed questionable design choices into the robots, and we know something happened during Baby's first and only day out. So what was that something? Well, the answer is within this game's only death minigame that I happened to bring up earlier. If you somehow manage to give every kid a cupcake, grab this ice cream cone and then set it down on this spot on the very first screen, a task that, by the way, took me entirely too long to finish my first time playing, then this red-haired girl will show up, walk over, and get grabbed, screaming all the way down. And now the pieces are starting to fall into place, because in between every night, we also have dialogue from this little British girl talking to her father. So, based on the idea that William has an accent,
She can even dispense ice cream.
and this little girl has the same accent,
Daddy just once let me go play with her.
I think it's safe to say that we can assume that William is this girl's dad. And Baby's ability to snatch kids is why William won't let his daughter play with the robot. Which, you know, ended up working out. But just because this robot is possessed by a little girl doesn't mean Baby is innocent-natured. And besides, I'm not really sure how this little girl possessed Baby without a soul anyways. The point is, Baby can't be trusted. As she herself tells us in Night 4, she learned how to pretend and collude with the other animatronics to kidnap people, as shown when we ourselves get trapped in a spring-lock suit overnight. Oh, and about that spring-lock suit, I personally don't think it really matters which one it is, since it's most likely just a fun-time model, and I'm more inclined to believe the point of the line is to tell us that the spring-lock suits were still in circulation at the time. But what does matter is Baby manipulating Mike into the scooping room, where he has his insides removed and gets filled with Ennard, a conglomeration of all the other robots in the bunker. All of this, alone, would be a really cool story, but Sister Location goes an extra mile with the alternate ending and its custom night DLC. The alternate ending gameplay has Baby channeling the voice of the little girl she grabbed to manipulate Mike.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with me again.
Now let me ask you this. Why would that matter to Mike? Sure, Baby helped us out in the first couple of nights, but that doesn't mean anything to us now that we know she betrays us. That is, until you start beating the challenges of the DLC and unlock these cutscenes. Over time, Mike's body decays until the animatronics remove themselves from their host. But to the surprise of everyone around the time of this game's release, Mike stands back up, revived.
You won't die.
And if that still isn't enough lore for you, this isn't even the final moment of the game. This is.
Father, it's me, Michael.
That's right, as if having the accent wasn't obvious enough, Michael is revealed to be the son of William, and the brother of this little girl. And based on the context of this final shot where Springtrap reveals himself amongst the wreckage of Fazbear Frights, we can conclude that William Afton is the franchise's serial killer and main antagonist. Obviously, if you read the books, you'd already know his name was William Afton, but at least now in the games, we finally have the name of the purple guy. But of course it's introduced at the same time a literal purple man is added, so thanks Sky. And this not only changes our perspective on Mike, but also the crying kid from FNaF 4. And you know, now that I mention it, as I'm sure you're all aware of, there is one final secret hidden in this little office. And wouldn't you know it, this one breadcrumb would turn out to be the missing piece I needed to solving Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Plush Bear, we meet again. This seemingly small piece of lore is so impactful that just the nature of how it works can change the perspective of the franchise's chronology. If the toy is possessed, it's gotta be haunted by a character that is overall benevolent to this kid. And this not only narrows down the list of culprits it could be, but it also means that 4 has to take place after at least one child death has occurred. Granted, it could also be an imaginary friend, but then that doesn't explain the voices at the end of the game promising to put him back together, or any of the other specifically physical interactions. And right here and now is where I get the full benefit of doing this challenge. I'm doing all of this because I myself wanted to go through what MatPat and all of the other classic era theorists had to at the time to solve this story. And I wanted to test just how far you could get with the original FNaF before you had to start using the spin-off material to fill in the gaps of the story. It started in games, and for the sake of this challenge, I wanted to see how long it could stay there. And because we find the plush alongside a surveillance system pointed at the FNaF 4 house, I'm confident in saying that within the context of this game and the reveal, this is telling the audience that the Fredbear plush was a camera all this time and not haunted. Now, a lot of people will say this device resting on the bear is a walkie-talkie or a remote control or my personal favorite suggestion, a spirit box. Thank you, Cosmic, once again, that's actually a cool idea. But I personally believe everybody is hearing hoofbeats and thinking they're zebras, not horses. Unfortunately, the more boring answer is most likely the correct one. So regardless of what this block of polygons is, you can't remove the context of finding it in the surveillance room, which means the voice of Plush Bear is now coming from the crying kid's father, William Afton. And this reveal actually opens up a lot of questions when it comes to motivation. Does this mean that Willie turned into a killer because his son died? Or is it showing us that he's always been a terrible person who's surveilling and manipulating kids? Well, that's where the final puzzle piece comes in. The Immortal and the Restless TV show. I know I've been dancing around it, but to summarize, the entire point of the show is about this vampire guy who is obviously not a good dude, refusing to accept that the kid is his. Now, you could say that this is talking about William and Mike, or the crying kid, or baby's ghost, but ultimately, I think the show is a statement about the FNaF events itself. I see this TV show as a metaphor for Mike trying to get his old man to take accountability for everything that's happened in the franchise, and our main villain is trying to duck responsibility for all of it. But don't take my word for it, listen to what Withered Circle and Zetorox had to say about all of this.
The last episode we see before Mike gets stuffed into, like, the Springlock suit is Clara telling to Vlad that he works the graveyard shift at the Friday Taco, which is, like, you work the night shift at Freddy Fazbear's.
Yep.
So that's something. That's the only time we are shown something like that. And I know not many people will agree with me on this. It's like, it's a weird thing where I believe that there was a point where William spoke for that Fredbear plush, but I don't think that the way we see Fredbear in the minigames are like little Fredbear cameras that William has all over the place. I think that the voice that Crying Child hears through the minigames is imaginary. I think that Afton did speak for those plushies, which explains the weird, like, remote thing in the private room. It's possible that he had, like, one plush. If it was any of them, it was, like, the plush that we see on his bed.
I think the implication's kind of clear. The plush appears in William's office, first of all, which is already obviously heavily connected to FNaF 4. And then, at the end of the game, Mike says, you know, I put her back together. Obviously, it's very similarly worded to, I'll put you back together, right? So, I think the implication is kind of clear that William is connected to that phrase, if that's what he asked Mike to do. And then the Fredbear plush is connected to William, who put the pieces together. William is at least, like, the final speaker. Now, for the rest of the game, I don't know. I think it probably isn't possessed. So I think it was probably, like,
that's what's
like
cool.
An imaginary friend type of thing.
Thank you again, guys, for coming on the show, and to get back to the point of the video, all of this is basically to say that the story of Five Nights at Freddy's at this point is ultimately the story of the Afton family. A younger brother who dies too soon, a sister who disobeyed and pays for it, an older brother who ends up putting the pieces of his siblings back together, and their father who turned from manipulation and spying to murder. And, I've got to talk about something that drives me completely up a wall. I want to talk about will care real quick. People have got to stop confusing love with caring. Let's ignore the fact that both of those are not black and white. They're a whole-ass spectrum of color. For example, I can love martial arts, but I don't love it the same way that I do my family or friends, right? But more importantly, you can care about something without being invested in it emotionally. So if William only cares about his kids because they're like a status symbol or they're a helpful tool, then objectively, he cares about them. But most of the time this topic is brought up, it doesn't feel like we're talking about that. It feels like we're talking about love, and I'm just not buying it. Because at least at the times where we get to see William's relationship with his children, it's not exactly what I would call parental love. So no, I don't think he loves his kids, but I do think he cares because he's smart enough to realize what they can do for him. Just like how I don't really like video editing, but I acknowledge how important it is, especially since I'm aware that I have a trash tier voice and I have to work harder to get an audience. All I'm basically trying to say is, William can still care enough about his kids as tools that he doesn't want them to get damaged or get in the way of his other plans without having to love them. Okay, now let's return to the story of FNaF. Why did all of this happen, and how does the puppet, MCI, and the rest of Freddy's as a whole play into this? Is Mike out there right now hunting his dad? And was he actually the night guards from the other games? Well, spoilers, but I'm happy to tell you that those answers lie in the last 2 entries of the original FNaF era, and I've already started work on them. So if you've made it this far, thank you again so much for watching, and I want to give another shout out to my guest stars Zetorox and Withered Circle. If you've somehow watched my stuff but not theirs, make sure you go check out their channels after this. I also want to show some love to my new Discord friends, Walrus, Erica, Carrie, Plasma, and Springy. This community keeps growing every day, and I'm truly thankful for everybody that takes the time to join. So if you want to hop in with us, the link is down below. But until next time, I'm bowing out, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Connection terminated.
Oh, and by the way, I did not forget about the 1983 passcode thing. I just wanted to see how many of you I could bait into leaving a comment about it. Have a good day!